Hey there, it's Tim, aka RedBeardBarbell, here to give you a little brief video on bench press technique and how to coach the bench press. So CrossFit Magnus is going to be doing a cycle in our regular classes with bench press, and so let's all get on the same page on how to coach it and how to do it. So we're gonna talk very briefly about how to find a good starting place for grip width on the bench press. Then we'll talk about setup. We'll go into how to actually perform the lift, and then I'll have a few notes at the end about what I think are some good practices in terms of warming up for the bench press. So with that, we'll jump right into it and we'll talk about grip width. Jackie's going to come in here and we're going to show a little drill, a little way of determining how wide someone should grip the bar. So she can be standing or sitting, it doesn't really matter, but she's going to make sure she has good posture. Shoulder blades back and down, sitting up tall. Then she's going to take the pipe to somewhere between her sternum and her nipples. That's where her bench touch point is going to be. And then we're going to widen or narrow her grip until we get a vertical forearm. Or in this case, a forearm that's perpendicular to the pipe. So that's super important to be in the strongest position. You really should be forearms under the bar. It also will help you stay healthy. So she's at the touch point. She's got a perpendicular forearm, and so we can just sort of note where she's at in relation to the rings. We could also, the coach could measure from the inside of one index finger to the inside of the other, and that athlete then could know exactly how wide their grip should be. But probably the easiest thing is just to note position in relation to the rings and then have the athlete find that on the bar. Okay, so that is that's how we find grip width. Let's talk about how we set up for the bench press. Jackie will lay down here, and then we will go ahead and talk about some setup things. First of all, where do we lay down on the bench? We're going to lay down so that the bar is sort of right over the forehead. So basically, lining the bar up with the eyes is a pretty good guide, but if you move the bar just slightly, or you move yourself just slightly towards your feet from that position, you get to a place where you can not run into the J-cups while you're pressing, and you're still in a pretty good position to take it out of the rack and put it into the rack. So next thing on setup is that we need to get to a position where knee is below hip. So in this position where she's just laying on the bench, we're roughly at the same elevation. So we need to do one of two things. One is we can take the athlete's feet wide, find a wide position where the athlete can still push through the floor, but the knee is below the hip. So I think we got there in this position. So wide is one option. The other option is to pull the feet underneath, which is what Jackie typically does. So she pulls underneath. She's got her knee well below her hip, and that's important, and we'll explain why later in the video. So knee below hip. After we have the knee below the hip, we're going to figure out how to grip the bar, put the bar in our hand. So she's going to go ahead and take like a false grip on the bench. That means a thumbless grip. So she's gripped it thumbless, and now she puts her thumb around, and what that does is it assures that the bar is real low. If you take your fingers off the bar so we can kind of see, the bar is real low, it's down close to her thumbs. That'll help us maintain a neutral wrist position as we're pressing. So again, thumbless grip first, a false grip, and then thumbs around the bar is a nice way to get to a nice low bar position, low in the hand. So then we're going to kind of push against the bar a little bit, and we're going to try to arch. We need to have the thoracic spine be at a little bit of an angle to put the shoulder in the healthiest position. It's also the strongest position. So we're trying to get our traps on the bench. We're trying to squeeze our scaps together, back and down, and we have this nice arch that develops here. Not everybody's going to be able to arch this much. She's done a lot of work to get to this much arch. Some people can arch way more than this, but the key is get a little bit of angle to the thoracic spine, Pinch the shoulder blades together, back and down, and make sure, get as close to getting the traps on the bench as possible. Lastly, a note about handoffs. The best practice is to have somebody hand the bar to the athlete and take it back into the rack. So taking it in and out of the rack is best done with a handoff from somebody else. That's a best practice. In class, we should be doing that whenever possible. That would be my recommendation. So, how do we actually do the lift? Jackie takes the bar out of the rack and she's going to go ahead and do the lift. Let's talk first about how to get the bar to the chest in the right way. First thing we need to make sure we're doing is bending the bar. So bend the bar means we're twisting the arms so that the thumbs are driving into the bar. So both of them. Our elbows start to point over our head, thumbs drive into the bar, and that turns on a bunch of tension in the scapular retractors and will set us up for the proper descent. The other thing that sets us up for the proper descent is a couple of cues that I like to use. One is chest to bar. So as the athlete is descending through the eccentric portion of the lift, we're thinking about driving the chest to the bar. Do that again, even drive your chest to the bar even more. She's reaching her chest, and that'll kind of turn on some of the scapular retractors, turn on the lats a little bit, and set the upper arm in the right position. Another one that works as well is pinch and pull. So now, Jackie, think about pinching your scaps together and pulling like you're doing a row. Do one more like that. Good. Now leave it on your chest. So on the chest, a couple of markers we're looking for. One is a relatively neutral wrist position. So she's not totally flexed like a lot of athletes will be. That position's a bad position for the wrist. It's also a bad position mechanically from a physics standpoint. So we want to get to a relatively neutral wrist position. It doesn't need to be straight where the bar's falling out. Just needs to be a little bit of flexion so the bar is right over the forearm. She's touching, again, between sternum and nipples. And the last thing we're looking for here is that the forearm is vertical. So she's ready to punch. So how do we initiate the movement off the chest? The concentric movement is initiated by two cues. One, push your feet through the floor. So you'll see if she pushes her feet through the floor, we get some upward momentum, but we also get her driving back towards the rack. If we set the knee below the hip, we should get this slight momentum going that direction, which is very helpful in the bench press. If we have not done that with our hips, then whenever we push through the floor, if you go ahead and move your feet out here, when you push through the floor, all you get is hips coming off the bench, and that isn't really so helpful. It's also illegal in the sport of powerlifting. So go ahead and put your feet back whenever you're ready. So we're thinking about heels through the floor, and then we're thinking about punch the ceiling. Aggressively punching the ceiling. So she's on her chest, she's going to push the feet through the floor and aggressively punch the ceiling. That's how we start the up. One last point on the pressing is that we want the athlete to not over push. So if Jackie pushes up to the top, go ahead and push up to the top, she could keep pushing, push here, push, and let her scaps come off the bench. This is what a lot of newbies will do. They'll just like push and they'll lose all their retraction, they go flat, and they're over pushing. So go ahead and pinch again. And she's just going to push all the way to the top of the movement, but her scaps stay down. So watch the shoulder of the athlete and make sure the shoulder isn't coming off the bench at the top of their press. The last thing is you'll notice the bar moves in an arc. She touches at her sternum and she pushes back to a spot where she's over her shoulders. Do one more rep for me. Sternum and shoulders. So there's a slight backwards arc to the bench press. Thank you, Jackie. You can rack it. A straight bench press motion is not the most efficient, effective, or safest. A little bit of arc is much better. So that's all I have on the setup, the lift, grip width. Let's talk just a little bit about warm-ups. At CrossFit Magnus, we use a lot of yoga push-ups, ring rows. These are great exercises. Additionally, things like black burns and the half kneeling presses we've been doing lately are great exercises to warm up for bench press. I also like band pull-aparts, and I'll include in email form the video from Cressy that I really like, explaining how to do band pull-aparts appropriately. A couple other things that work well in bench press warm-up are pass-throughs and shoulder crankers with the pipe, just trying to open up those shoulders. Quadruped thoracic rotation is a great one to include as well, to make sure the athlete is moving through the thoracic so they can get in the proper position on the bench. Lastly, there's a video from Diesel Strength that they call their 3-minute shoulder warm-up. Using any or all of that video, the exercises in that video with bands, is a great way to warm up the shoulders for the bench press, so we keep people safe and healthy. That's all I have for today. Hopefully this video is useful, gets everyone on the same page on how to perform and coach the lift. And if you have any more questions, see me. But for now, let's go ahead and take a ride on the gain train to Bench Pressville. Woo woo!